Hi, it's Collette from the Sacred Rose Temple, and I'm here for your weekly energy report. Well, this forecast is as going to be as, thick as the rest. It seems that we are in a time in our collective where transformation is key and the only thing that the cosmos is interested in. So I'm not surprised if you're all reading this and listening to this with some big stuff happening in your life, because I don't think any of us is escaping it. And if we feel that we are, maybe we're just ignoring it, repressing it, or hiding from it. Because the planet is in a wholesome period of transformation and nobody gets out of this. So it is a time to think, if the whole universe and planet and Earth wants to transform and our human and collective unconscious, then where is my part in that, and what's it asking me to do? I think I'm going to just start there and go through many of the things that is happening at the minute. Obviously, I shared a lot about Pluto in Aquarius and how that is like a new time, a time for regeneration, a time for spiritual awakening, a time that is going to change the world and yours. And that's why this thing about and yours is something I'm going to harp on all the way through 2025, is because these energies and these planetary alignments and the forecasting of spirit, of the divine, of energy is all about you. I mean, the focus has to be on us as individuals. Every single prophet or teacher of spirituality and mysticism share about we are the change. So we have to do that on an individual level that will, change the collective, as I always say. But what we're looking at is really deep within that. Pluto in Aquarius is about moral integrity. It's about really looking at yourself and redefining yourself and looking at yourself thinking, how are my morals? What are they? Do I stand by them? For example, are you a liar? Does that need to change? Well, of course it does. If you're to live in a more truthful world, then you need to hold the truth. Do you stick to your word? Do you always follow through on what you say? Do you hide? We all kind of have some awareness of our bad behaviors, and it's really time to identify them and to write them down. And as a student and a person who works with Jungian psychology, I understand that the shadow is really a deep part of all of us and is not to be demonized. It's not to be thought of as bad. It's to think of it as a way of finding the repressed parts, the hidden parts, the dark things we deem as dark, and healing them and bringing them to the light so they don't affect us in our life anymore or affect other people. So we're looking at our own sense of self and integrity and morals and also the structures outside of us. If you hold lies, you will invite structures that lie in your life as well. Groups that you've been connected to, teachers that you have been wrangled with. I get this all the time. Oh, this teacher was this and that. And it's just a really deep place to take a look at the self. And also to understand that that's not saying that that person isn't, gets off the hook. Of course, we see all in our world, all the horrific things people have done to other people. But what in you attracted that in? What did you find attractive of that? And, we often find it with mass cults and big groups that people all get in and start hero worshipping the leaders and the teachers. There's just a sense of lack of self, and that person doesn't understand their own prowess and wants to project it on another because they're not willing to own it in themselves. So it's kind of, looking at the structures and saying what's going on in the structure that I'm in. It could be work, it could be relationship, it could be a group that you're in, and what are the shadows and what are the lights? And if there's shadows, which there will be, why have I been attracted to these particular ones? What's it showing me today? So we also move into Mercury retrograde today on the 25th, and that is a time of, hindsight. It's a time of looking back. It's a time of thinking. It's a time not to take on anything new at this point, not to sign any contracts, not to buy new technology, that kind of thing, but to understand that things may be getting broken or breaking because they need to. And this retrograde is also a deep time. You know, if you think about the structure of Mercury, it's a deeply reflective material. Planet Mercury is a deep, you know, illuminator. So we're able to kind of just sit in this energy without taking any real action and being more self-reflective. And that fits perfectly because we're now in Sagittarius season, and that is all about reevaluation. It's about asking, you know, yourself, what have you been working through? What has been good for you? What hasn't been good for you? And I wrote a very personal piece this morning that I posted in my women's group and in my community on my website, which was a deep share, reflective share of what's been happening to me over the past 6 months, which has been very, very dark. I feel like I'm still in this underworld space of deep chaos and pain, and lots of things have been happening for me. I've had a lot of personal problems with family illness and with the separation of relationship, and a lot of darkness coming from that relationship and still impacting me. And it's really time for me to do that deeper inner reflection work. I've been working with it consistently over the last 2 years, and some lots of realizations with my animus and my masculine relating with myself and with others. So if you're in my community group, you'll be able to read that musing there. But it is all about the inner work. It really is about the inner work. It's about you looking at you and knowing that this time to do it will really pay dividends when we come into the spring. I was reading a really wonderful article today by Astrology for Mindful Living, and she wrote about Uranus working with the Algol, which is a star, a very powerful star she shares. And she shared a story of Medusa. Now, I know Medusa from my studies and psychology and symbology, and I have to agree with everything she wrote that Medusa is the goddess of healed trauma. She's the goddess that has shown us that her traumatic being, the rape, and all the other things that happened to Medusa was all about female transformation, her overcoming trauma into a very powerful version of a goddess with a head of snakes. And the whole reflection of Medusa is that stony gaze that will turn people to stone, because that's what we do when we actually don't deal with our shadow. We look at people and we demonize them. We look at people through the lens of our own shadows and we turn them to stone. And really, it's the hurt and the pain within us that does that. So she teaches us to take a really good look at ourselves. She teaches us to close our eyes and take that inner reflection inward, to take a whole good look at the shadow self and not to project that outwards. The symbols of the snakes all around her head is, you know, parts of trauma. What does each snake offer Medusa on her healing journey? And the symbol of the snake, as we know through all of our lives, has been deeply profound. I've often had many dreams of snakes, and so of the women that I guide, it's often the most dream that comes up in women's circles is the snake. And the snake is something I love. I mean, I had snakes as a child. I've wrote lots of pieces on the energy of snake. I am really drawn to snakes. I love them as creatures. I think they're beautiful and wonderful. And most people are scared of them. And so that intrigued me as a child. Like, why were people so scared of those beautiful, slithering, silky skinned creatures? And my own pet snake, Zoltan, would sit on my hand and, you know, take heat from me. And oh, he was just gorgeous. And I had other snakes as well. So the snake for me isn't a worrisome symbol, but it is for many, because most people associate the snake with danger. And that is an ancient symbol of the snake because, you know, in ancient society, the snake did represent danger. It was fatal if it bit you, or, you know, the snake has appeared in the Bible as the voice of temptation. So, really, the snake for me, in more psycho spiritual terms, is symbolic of the unconscious. It's all the repressed parts of you that you're not aware of, your behaviors that you're not aware of, that you haven't brought to light yet. I was saying to a friend the other week that the amount of people I deal with and know who show neurodivergent tendencies is really, really high, and they're not aware of it. They're not aware. And, I know people who've done really deep spiritual seeking, yet their whole behavior is typically neurodivergent and they're unaware and not been tested. And I think in a collective where we are all showing, non-typical, you know, brain how our brain operates. And I'm not saying this in a negative light, not at all, because I think we're a changing species. And I think our brains are beginning to operate in a different way. Maybe that's for the new world coming. But they're unaware of these things that limit them or cause them issues and then project it all out on other people. So there's just like basics. I'm always sharing tests within my yoga group, like test yourself for neurodivergency, test yourself for this, test yourself for that. And I had to undergo a whole lot of procedures of testing when I was doing somatic therapy. I had to know, like, was I OCD? Yes, I am moderately OCD. What is it I'm suffering with? And if you don't know that, then you don't know yourself, because we're all holding something. So it's about that unconsciousness. When you're unaware of yourself and how your mind and brain operates and your behaviors, you're literally in a deep space of, like, lack of knowledge, and that will be affecting you badly. The snake also symbolizes individuation, the shedding of skins, the cycles of change, and we all should be going through change all the time. There is the part of, the rebirth and transformation. One's shadow rebirths us, changing limiting belief changes us, getting rid of darker behavior changes us, it changes as the world around us. The snake is also a guardian of wisdom. It's the guardian of sacred ancient knowledge. She comes to us in dreams, often as danger, warning, and it gives us a more deeper ancient knowledge. There's also that dualistic nature of the snake, which is both healing. We often seen the the symbols of snakes around healing and then around danger. So the dualistic nature of that is really, really beautiful and important. It can offer us destruction, it can offer us healing, and we've got to find out when a snake appears to us, which one we're actually working with and what it's showing us. I think one of my favorites is the Kundalini energy, having been a somatic practitioner, particularly trained in lots of Eastern methods of yoga and movement, and knowing that that energy is very prevalent in our bodies, and how the chi, the life force, or, as Druidess, the Awen moves through the body and enlightens us, awakes us, moves stuff. The aspect of the snake, which is about the feminine and fertility. And then finally, the Ouroboros. So the Ouroboros, which is about wholeness, integration, life and death recycles. So we're getting a lot of snake symbology, I see, in the collective, and we'll be coming further into vision. And so you've got an idea of all those things right there that are trying to help us change, trying to help us evolve. And I'm sure that as the energy forecasts go on over the winter months and into next year, that the message is going to be fundamentally the same. Are you doing the inner work? Are you really doing the healing? I have seen mostly of recent lots of people in spiritual bypassing. They want to fantasize. They want to be in the fantasy of spirituality. They like the talking to the fairies or the waking kundalini or the higher energies, but they don't want to go into the deep, dark realms of the underworld and the chaos. I was wrangling with Collette, one of the primal goddesses of the Celtic community, who's the goddess of the storm, and she's a wicked, not wicked, that's the wrong word, that's my own projection. She is a force to be reckoned with. We cannot nicify these goddesses. They hold the deep power of the chaos, of the change, of the destruction. And there's always a part of us, like I just did, want to demonize or change that into nice. That's not what that goddess represents. And I discovered that as I fought her on the land as she ripped part of my, land apart at the weekend. And yeah, like that's who she is. And I'm screaming, stop, but that's who she is. And I think we repress the symbol of the snake too, is a repression of that darker side of the feminine. And that's not just a one size plaster for women, because men hold feminine energy in them. And you find that men are very, very afraid of their darker feminine energy also, which is why we know about the hag and the dark feminine as being a hostile thing, because it scares everybody, because it's a repressed part of themselves. And so I'm seeing a lot of repression, a lot of denial of this darker feminine, a lot of denial of the shadow. And with that, I think this disengagement from emotions, people don't want to go to the bad feeling. They don't want to feel the darkness. They don't want to feel the suffering. I mean, Lord knows I haven't, but I've been freaking forced to over the last 6 months. And I thought I was a pretty emotional person, but repressed emotions live in us. And I realized when I cried in the garden like a banshee that there was something releasing from me, just a deeper token. Collette, you're not too much. Collette, you don't emote too much. This is the healing. And so I think it's really vital that we understand that the more humanity represses emotion, the more problems we're in. And I talked about that in the last energy forecast when I worked with somebody on the topic of rage. Repressed rage is what causes wars and fights and arguments. Transformed rage, released rage, rage that brings out passion and fire and want for change, creates the opposite. So, whatever we're holding inside that we're unconscious of, and many of us are huge, big bags of repressed emotion, when we release it, it transforms. That is the alchemy. And so, in my deepest journey of my inner feminine and inner masculine work, I am releasing lots of repression for my animus and his need to hold and control and guard me, and allow myself to sink more into the anima, who is vulnerable, who is emotional, who is all the things that the feminine is within a body that is either male or female. It doesn't matter. So ask yourself this week, am I truly, really in touch with my emotions? Do I allow my deeper emotions to be felt? And do I share that? Do I express? Do I allow people to see that? Like, what is your situation with that? And what emotions do you find hard? Like, I pretty access rage and anger pretty easy, but I know people that have not been angry or shown rage for years, and that must destroy the inner world, the inner body. So everything is needed so that we work through it and heal it. That's a real spiritual journey, not in the fantasy, not in the story, not in the projection on the Magdalene or the Mary or the goddess, but actually within yourself. If you cannot see your own inner shadows and darkness, you will project them all on everybody else, and you will keep attracting these very things that you try to escape because they live within you. So I hope you like the the energy forecast this week, as intense as it always is, but do the work and you will be rewarded.